I've had the Canon R5 II for just about 3 weeks now, and today I'm going to be showing you how I do video walkthroughs with it using the 14 to 35 millimeter and the Mavic 3 Pro. Now, specifically, I am shooting in sRAW, that is small RAW, 4K, 60 frames per second. And so I'm going to show you how I grade that footage with the R5 II. But before that, I'm going to show you the video, show you some shots in it and what camera did I use, the R5 II and then the Mavic 3, and a kind of a before and after in the grading. Then we're going to come back in here. I'm going to go into Vinci Resolve, and then I'm going to show you exactly my process in grading sRAW. Is it perfect? No. Am I perfect? Yes. No, I'm not. My wife would definitely tell you not. But we're going to go in. I'm going to show you my process, and maybe my process will work for you. We'll see. So this house is actually pretty awesome. And for $900,000, it could be yours. And for a lot of you, that's like nothing. But in Wisconsin, that's a mansion. That's what us folks like. So you have the Canon R5 Mark II, or you have another camera that does sRAW. Well, how do you grade it? I don't know. I'm winging it. I think I'm doing it right. I might not be, but my clients like it, so I'm going to keep doing it. And maybe after this video, in the comments below, you can tell me how you grade your sRAW or your sRAW. And in this case, it is sRAW, small RAW, 4K, 60 frames per second, slowed down in a 24 frame per second timeline. And this is exactly my process. Again, not perfect. I kind of wing it. You can tell me if I'm doing it wrong. But let's get in there and maybe it will help you out. So this is my timeline right here. It's already completed, but let's bring in some clips and I can show you what I do to get started after I've done all my cuts. So let's bring in this one. Now, if you have the R5 Mark II, you have 24-bit audio channels and you have quad channels now. It is pretty crazy. And a lot of the times we're not going to be utilizing this, but this will be a video for another time. In this case, I'm going to unlink this inside of Vinci Resolve. And again, we are in this tab. So I'm going to get rid of these because I'm going to overlay music on the bottom anyways. Here, let's just say we hit all our edits. We did everything we wanted it to be. And this is the footage. Well, we need to interpret this raw footage into the right color footage that you are looking for. Otherwise, this looks pretty bland, right? So let's do this. Go right into your color tab right here. And since it is raw and it tells you what is raw on here, we can go right over to this tab. Let's get it bigger. And this is where we're going to begin. We've got decode quality. We're going to go Canon full res. Then under decode using, we are going to pick the clip. Now that unlocks every single thing on here. And this is the wonderful thing about RAW, whether it's sRAW or the full 8K RAW that you get with the Canon R5 Mark II or a Canon R5 or R5C. You have these options. Now the default on here, at least for me, is Canon Log 2. Now I can switch this to Rec 709. I do not. Could be regular log. It could be C-Log 3. See how it changed it quite a bit right there. Let's go into C-Log 2. It is a lot more data, a lot more information. It does not crunch the shadows as much. I shot this in ISO 4000. Now, ISO 4000, as far as I can tell with my experience of 3 weeks with this camera, is the next tier base ISO. So the first one is 800, 4000. If you go to 3200, it is actually a lot noisier in the shadows than 4000. But the cool thing about RAW is I can pick my ISO. If I didn't feel like I got it right, I can go to 8000. I don't want to. Right here, the 4000 was actually pretty good. And in here, again, I want to reiterate that we're in the RAW, camera RAW section right here in DaVinci Resolve. I can change the color temperature. So this is where it got as shot. It shows 3900 Kelvin. I can switch it to daylight. I can keep it as shot. It's hard to tell right here until I start grading exactly if I am right on with it. Should I have done an automatic white balance? I don't know, but the cool thing is I can fix it right here in post. So let's do this. Let's assume exposure is right. Sharpness automatically does go to 10, but I've even noticed if I brought it down to like basically nothing, it doesn't change a whole lot. So I think DaVinci Resolve might be doing some more updates with Canon RAW or sRAW. But let's just keep it at the default of 10. I'm going to keep highlights where they're at. I'm going to keep shadows, saturation. I can come back in here after I start grading it anyways and tweak it. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go right over to the color wheel. So I'm in the color wheel, but before I do anything, I go right up here. Let's make this a little bit bigger, to the color space transform. And I'm going to bring that over here. And now it is attached. Now think of this as layers. Here's the main one. I can edit under here with that. And then here is the next layer. I put in for the input color space, all I do, and again, I don't know if I'm right, but this is how I do it. I go to Canon Cinema Gamut. And so as you can tell, it does slightly change it. Let me get in there just a little bit with a zoom. So you can kind of see the color changes slightly right where those hydrangeas are. Okay, now that we've done that under the color space, we can also tweak some of these things. And the first thing I like to do is the curves. So right here is the curve, and what you're going to look at right here is the waveform. The cool thing about the R5 II is you do have waveforms, so this is pretty much what you're going to see in your camera as well. If you look over by this bookshelf and right here, that would be this area. And then where it's blown out a little bit right here, that would be by the windows. So this gives you an idea of how to grade the proper exposure. But this is what I do. I start in the middle. So when you have your curves, see it's moving up and down, I try to keep it right, and that is your mids. Now we are going to go probably right about here, and this is going to be your shadow. So now we're going to bring the shadow down, and as you can tell in the TV and other dark spots, a little bit more contrast and detail becomes more apparent. And then up here is the highlights. So let's bring the highlights up, and the highlights actually bring in more sharpness to that area. Right now, I'm going to show you a before and after. So this is before, after. And this was simple, is the way we want it. Now, they're called S curves because it kind of does an S in a way. You can have a more drastic S curve. So you can have this down here, bring in, I don't like to do this, by the way. I don't like, so once you get the S curve the way you want it, bring in the mids a little bit again. You can then tweak it right over here near the color wheel. So we've got the color boost, the shadows, the highlights in the lower left here, saturation, hue, and again, it's all under this little color space that I have. So with shadows, let's just say I wanted to bring up shadows a little bit more. That's way too much, but you can tweak it right there. And as you're tweaking it, you can tell if you're clipping your shadows too low. They're not. We have enough detail in the shadows. Highlights, I can bring the highlights down and then you can see out the window a little bit, but that is sacrificing some other shots. So you have to have a nice balance when you're shooting inside, especially when it's not controlled lighting, like an interview style. This is a video walkthrough of a house. So we are going to compromise and do something, I don't know, right about there. Now, because you are in sRAW or any kind of RAW, you have a lot of latitude, especially with the 12-bit, of cranking up your colors and saturation. So here we go. I'm going to grab the saturation and I'm just going to, let's just crank it really hard. Oh my gosh. Even at 100%, I didn't even ruin or create any artifacting at all. Not that I recommend 100% saturation, but you do have that option. I usually fall somewhere into the high 60s, low 70s, somewhere in there. And then you can really do a little bit. You don't want to do much, but on this color boost, if you just bring that up a little bit. Now this is way too much. See, that's all the way up. That looks weird. It looks like a kid's drawing. We will bring it down. Yeah, I would say about 6. You really don't need a whole lot. So, I mean, if we were to play this right here, that is what that looks like. Now, you saw a shot that looked a lot smoother, right? Well, let me show you what I do with that. Now, to remind you, this is a 60 frame per second shot in a 24 frame per second timeline. So what do? You slow it down all the way 40% so it matches that timeline. So in this clip right over here, you just go over to speed change and we will hit 40, extend my timeline. And now it is actually smoother. And I use the IBIS in the camera along with obviously the lens, the 14 to 35, and on a gimbal, 60 frames per second slowing down. I don't do any kind of image stabilization in post unless it is absolutely horrible, which it rarely is. It just looks really good in the shots that you need. And now you can change it with your lift, your gamma, your gain, all this. The gamma is kind of important when you are trying to get a different specific look in your videos. For example, if we wanted to warm this up a little bit with some magenta in the gamma, I would move this up left a little bit and it warms it up and kind of gives it a little vintage-ish look right there. The last thing I wanted to show you is how I handle noise in a lot of these footages. For the most part, I let it go because I think it looks natural. But in this case, this room is really dark and I didn't have the ISO properly adjusted. And even if I tweak it in post in the RAW section, it still doesn't look good. If you can see, it is a little bit hard on YouTube land, but it is very noisy in the shadows, especially if you can see a lot of noise and a lot of artifacting right in there. So if you need to clean that up, if you want it to look really good, it is so simple in Vinci Resolve. Is it perfect? No. Does it work well? Yes. I'm going to show you right now. So in this tab area, you're going to go all the way over here to the far right, and where it says temporal NR, we are going to go to the 5, and now you have the luma and the chroma. Now I'm not perfect at this, but this is something that you can do. If you look in the noise, let's kind of zoom in right there, and I start moving this over, it really cleans it up. It takes away a little bit of sharpness, a little bit of detail, but it is. This is before I do anything with the threshold. Now I'm going to put it to 10. And now it just cleaned that up. So that is all cleaned up right there. And with my MacBook Pro M2 Max, this thing just renders out pretty quickly, so there is no delay when fixing up all that noise. So in a nutshell, that is how I color grade my video walkthroughs when it comes to real estate. Is it perfect? No. Am I learning all the time? Constantly. But I got to tell you, going from doing C-Log 3 to C-Log 2, now to RAW, I don't think I can ever go back. There is so much more leverage in fixing clips that I might have messed up to begin with. And my clients are happy, and I'm happy. If you want to bypass doing all that work that I just did, well, let me know if you want me to create a LUT for you. That is a lookup table. All you have to do is apply it. It's like a preset, and it will get you 3/4 of the way there. And then you just have to tweak it a little bit. But I was thinking of creating some. It would help me out a little bit. I would charge very little. It'd probably be like $5. And you would download it, and you can apply it to your C-Log 2 or your RAW that was transcribed into C-Log 2. And if you found value in this video, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps. It helps the algorithm. And also, if you haven't already, please subscribe, because that does also help the channel. I want more to be part of my cult. More of you need to join in order for us to take over YouTube. And like always, the gear I use is in the links below, and there's going to be more gear there too, because I've got a ton more reviews, something more specifically to do with the Canon R5 Mark II when it comes to a lens, but also an accessory that I've been using for about 2 years now, that the R5 II rocks. Stay tuned. But now we're to that point. It's the end of the video. You're sad, but you got options. You got these videos to watch. There's more of Jared to go around. He's over there.